Hey everyone, welcome back to Topher Drives, where for the past few days, I've been daily driving this brand new 2026 Jeep Grand Cherokee with the new 2-liter Hurricane turbocharged inline 4. Now, the last time you guys saw me driving one of these, I was out in Southern California on a very gloomy, rainy day in the canyons. Now, as much as I love a canyon road, it's not really the place to test something like a Jeep Grand Cherokee. But if you're curious to see some performance driving impressions, I will have my first impressions video linked down in the description. But today's mission is much more important. Next week, Emily and I have our engagement photo shoot, and I don't have any shoes that fit our vibe and palette for the outfits that we're wearing during the shoot. If you guys are married or getting married, you'll understand what I'm on about. But today, we're gonna use this Jeep Grand Cherokee to go out to the mall to find a pair that does fit the vibe of the shoot, and we're going to the Somerset Collection Mall, which is probably the nicest mall in Michigan. It's about a 40-minute drive from here, and I thought this would give us the perfect opportunity to see what this new variant of the WL Jeep Grand Cherokee is like to live with. Now, before we get into all of that, let's talk what's actually new for this, because the WL has been around since 2021. As we know, most of it is still the same, but they've changed one key thing, which we'll just show you right off the bat. This is the biggest deal with this car, is top trims have ditched the 3.6-liter Pentastar V6 in favor for a new 2-liter turbo. Now, I know what you're thinking. Another angel has lost its wings, and honestly, I was thinking sort of the same thing when I heard the news, but they have actually given this a pretty decent amount of power. So this has 324 horsepower and 332 pound-feet of torque. It's still connected to an 8-speed ZF automatic, and of course, this is Jeep, so it is 4-wheel drive. But they haven't completely gotten rid of the Pentastar. You can still get it in, I think, the bottom 2 models, the Laredo and Laredo X, I think they're called. But top trims like this Summit that we're driving today, which is 66 grand, have the 2-liter Hurricane. Now, this is kind of a clever engine, and I'm not an engineer, so I'm not the best at explaining this sort of thing, but it has the sort of pre-explosion fuel injection that the Maserati Nettuno has. So the engine that we saw in the MC20 and now the MC Pura has similar technology. And of course, under the same umbrella as Stellantis, you know, Maserati, there are things here. In fact, this is on somewhat of a same platform as the Maserati Gran Turismo, but we won't get too far into that in today's video. But yeah, there's our big old turbo, and it looks like somebody broke the engine cover on this car. It looks like it's cracked. Maybe it's supposed to be like that. I don't know. That's the biggest news. So additionally, with this having a little bit more power, it's also a bit more efficient. So this is rated at 26 mpg on the highway, 21 in the city, 23 combined, and it has a 23-gallon fuel tank, which means you're able to get over 500 miles of range if you're driving carefully. Now, I haven't been being super efficient this week, but I've still got half a tank of fuel left, and it's showing something like 230 miles of range. So we should be able to still get out to Troy, Michigan and back without having to fill up, but if we need to, we will. So, as I said, this is the Summit trim, so it's got everything. This one is a pretty nice spec. It's velvet red with Tupelo tan interior. And this is the short wheelbase car, or the 2-row car, I should say. So this is not the Grand Cherokee L. And the best thing ever awaits you under the trunk floor. That is a full-sized spare. Now, obviously, it's not a big 20-inch wheel or whatever, but it is a 245/65/18. So if you're on the trail or something, or just anywhere, if you're in Troy, Michigan, you run over a nail, you've got a full-size spare. That is excellent. And you've got a toolkit, all the stuff that you need. And obviously, above that, we have quite a lot of storage as well. This is still a Grand Cherokee. It's still properly sized, and it's still Jeep's best-selling model in the US, which is just crazy, because think about all the compasses you see. I don't understand how they're able to move so many of these, but I guess maybe it's a price thing. I mean, a base model one of these is quite a bit cheaper than this Summit trim, which starts at $60,000. As I told you guys, as spec today, with a couple of options and destination worked in, this is 66 grand. So, but honestly, even all things considered with this, I feel like 66 isn't insane. I mean, it's expensive, obviously, but I don't know that it's insane. So since this is a Jeep, we have many little Easter eggs. You've got the classic Willys Jeep there in the fuel door, and then on the window over here, and it's actually, I should have shown you while we were inside, but you've got every generation of Grand Cherokee on your rear quarter glass. So I think that's pretty cool too. So the Summit trim gets these pretty large, oh, they're 21s. Okay, I was a little bit off. 21-inch wheels wrapped in a Continental tire, 275/45 R21. I suspect that is a squared setup. Now, this is definitely not going to help our fuel economy having a 275 with a 21. Yep, okay, so these are squared. And you can see this car has been to a certain magazine outlet that has driven it like it's a Lotus Exige, which is why we have some wear on the edge there. But anyway, all right, we'll continue our walk around and we'll go to the back seat. Now, this is by far my favorite part of the Jeep Grand Cherokee, and this does kind of apply only to the Summit because their attention to detail in this interior is just unbelievable. For 60 grand, I mean, everything is wrapped in something. You've got black leather on the top. You've got this beautiful wood, which, let me tell you, not a lot of companies still do wood trim. Then you have this tan leather, which is quilted. Your whole armrest, everything, that's wrapped in leather. It keeps going. Bottom of the door panel, that's wrapped in leather. I mean, this is stuff you see on like a Rolls Royce, or our Alpina XB7 has this bottom of the door panel wrapped in leather. So it's stuff like this that, you know, Jeep is really trying to reach this upper echelon, and it's appropriate we're taking this out to Troy, Michigan, because I always like to joke that the Jeep Grand Cherokee is kind of the Range Rover or the G-Wagon of Michigan, because you see them everywhere here. But anyway, let's jump in the back. Obviously, seating surfaces are just as nice as the door panels. They even wrap the back of the seats in leather. Pretty nice door closes there. Obviously, we have some sunshades. They're not power, but they are still there. Headliner is wrapped in Alcantara, framing this big panoramic roof, which we like to see as well. Full down armrest with some cup holders, but the most important thing, what is the room like back here? Well, we've got a bit of a stadium seating setup, so I sit pretty high, and behind myself at 5'11", I have enough room. You know, this is an abundance of legroom back here. There is the Grand Cherokee L, which would have a little bit more room, I suspect. I don't remember the last time I was in one of those, but this Summit gets you your own climate control panel back here with vents in the middle and on the B-pillars. Always like to see that. That's a very like wagon-y touch in, I guess, Jeeps. I think this is kind of a Jeep thing as well. But little baby drivetrain hump here. You could, I think, sit in the middle for a short trip and you would be just fine. Okay, let's jump up front and we'll show you what that looks like, and we'll fire this thing up. I fear the walk around has already gone too long, so we'll try and wrap this. Summit kick plates, that's pretty cool as well. These front seats, lots of detail going on. I do love this Tupelo tan, especially with the red exterior, looks really good. We have perforations here. We have Summit pressed into our leather right here, and these are legit real leather seats as well. Of course, the whole dashboard is wrapped in leather, all of the nice stuff. We have a 19-speaker Macintosh sound system in here, which you know we will be testing out for you today. I hate using the S word, and I won't, but these doors feel very much higher end than what you would suspect by reading on the steering wheel, which I don't know, because look at this. This is all leather stitched even on the airbag cover. So they've really gone all out. Even these bits, this is stitched in leather. I mean, you kind of have to like really look hard to find something that isn't stitched in this car. So let's start it up. That now lives right here in the middle. And this WL still has kind of the old school Jeep chime, which I appreciate, because some of the newer ones, I don't know, they have like the Fiat chime, and I don't super enjoy that. Like if you get a Jeep Compass, it just doesn't seem right. This has a passenger screen. Of course, we won't be using that today. Emily was actually going to come with me, but she's feeling a bit under the weather, so she decided to stay home. But I did bring a cup to also demonstrate our cup holder performance, which is quite good. I mean, this does not move around at all. We've got nice little grips in there to take care of that. Two-tiered center console. I got my sunglasses in the top and my hat in the bottom. Lots of room there. And then you've got this little hidden compartment, which I always forget how to open. There it goes. Okay, after 16 tries, it will open. And you can see inside we have a wireless charger with my phone on it, and some USB-A and USB-C and HDMI and a spot for your radar detector in there. So all that sort of good stuff. Now, Jeep did move away from the big physical climate control panel at some point with the WL. We still have a little bit of that with this separate haptic panel. Not the biggest fan of this because it doesn't always recognize your inputs. Looks like today it's doing a little bit of a better job. Okay. See, that's what I'm talking about. And then we have a volume knob here, which these knobs feel really nice too. They're like a metal knurled sort of thing. And then we have this big long line of switches up here to turn off your auto stop start, your lane keep assist, traction control, auto parking, all of this stuff. It all exists. And then the power for your passenger screen as well. Digital gauge cluster. And the infotainment has wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. This is, I mean, you guys pretty much know this infotainment. It's the same as any other Stellantis car these days, and it works just about fine. Now, this Summit trim also has an air suspension, which you can raise and lower. I guess we should probably show you this. Apologies, I just already know this video is going to be ridiculously long, but it's got 2 off-road settings. So this is now raising up into what Jeep call off-road 2, which means it's going to look hilarious because the wheels are going to look like they're off the bottom of a grand piano once this lifts all the way up. Okay, so there you go. There's off-road 2, which looks like somebody put this in Photoshop and lifted the body up to be silly. But what I love the most and what I think looks awesome is when you put this down into entry exit mode and it absolutely slams itself down. Okay, so we're now stance nation. We went from lifted Jeep to slammed Jeep in about 30 seconds there. So air suspension in this, it seems to work pretty well. We'll talk about ride quality and stuff, of course, while we're on the road. But it does make this very easy to get in and out of, when you are entering and exiting. This week I've been averaging 20.5 mpg. I'm going to reset that because I'm curious what we're going to get on today's trip. Obviously, lots of different ways you can view this digital gauge cluster. We're going to leave this on just the regular looking gauge pods, and we're going to start our journey today. So into reverse, this obviously has a backup and a 360 camera. The only thing that's been a bit disappointing about this is the frame rate on this reverse camera. I mean, I don't know if you guys can really tell that on camera, but it's a little bit laggy, which the last thing you want is your backup camera to be laggy. So I've been reversing very slowly this week to make sure that I keep up with this backup camera. Dial shifter, you guys know I'm not the biggest fan of dial shifters, but this one is okay because it locks into place. So into park and into drive, it locks. And it's metal as well, so it feels pretty nice to operate. Under first driving impressions, and the first thing you'll notice getting into this is some of the controls and the weight to things are heavier than you may imagine. And the steering in particular does actually have some pretty decent weight to it. But I think the speed of the rack is appropriate for an SUV like this. You don't want it to be too quick, but you also don't want it to be so slow that it's hard to maneuver. And I think it's kind of the one driving characteristic that doesn't feel very Range Rover-y. I think Jeep could make a pretty big stride to catch Range Rover if they tweaked the steering just a little bit, made it a little bit velvetier. I don't know if that's a word, but they do call the exterior velvet red, so maybe make the steering velvet as well. Not a huge deal, and not even really something I don't think that many people would notice, but I drive so many of these cars, it's easy for me to compare. So what about the most important thing and the biggest change, the 2-liter Hurricane inline 4? Well, we talked about this when I was out in California on a canyon road. The power and torque here, it's adequate. 334 pound-feet of torque. It gets the job done. We have the best torque converter automatic in the business, the ZF 8HP or 80P, whatever it's called here. And most of the time, it gets the job done just fine. When you're hustling this, you don't really desire to have any more power. And knowing Stellantis, they'll probably put a V8 in this thing at some point. I really would not be surprised to see it. Let's bump this into sport. And you do get very subtle little ZF 8-speed farts between gears. They're pretty subdued. It's almost like it's like belching under its breath. I don't know if you guys will even be able to hear that with my audio, but there you go. And well, we'll take this corner up here and see if the Maserati Gran Turismo platform can hang. I wonder how much this actually has in common with that. Also, you can take manual control of your 8-speed with the paddle shifters. They do react pretty quickly. I mean, this is just on character for this 8-speed to behave like this. Obviously, sometimes they'll lock you out of a gear change. As you saw, I tried to go into second, and then it went into second. I hit it again. I was scared it was going to go into first, so then I hit the up, and I put myself into third. But for the most part, these paddles do an okay job. I mean, I haven't really found myself using them that much. It's easy to get rid of them. You just hold the up paddle that puts you back into drive. Anyway, though, why don't we show you how this gets off the line? We'll put this back into sport. Aerodynamic ride height achieved. And it really is adequate power. I mean, I don't really find myself longing for any more. Now, do I miss the V6? Maybe a little bit. I didn't mind that Pentastar. I mean, it's an ancient powertrain, but you know, it was kind of the signature of the Grand Cherokee for the last couple of generations, you know, since they ditched the inline 6. Okay, now that we're done being destructive with our fuel economy, which is 9.9, I'm actually going to reset this again because I don't think it would be fair to include the 0 to 60 and things in our evaluation of the efficiency of this car. So we'll reset it there, and we will kind of chill out for the rest of the drive. We will get this navigation going. We've got 50 minutes to go. Obviously, I'm not going to make you guys sit through all of that, but we'll do a little highway section, then we'll throw the camera back on once we get out there and continue our living with the Grand Cherokee video. But I gotta say, you know, as far as like the feeling you get while driving this, I think you do feel like you're in something nicer than a Jeep. And I feel bad saying that because Jeep has really been striving to like become higher end over the last however many years. But you really only see that in the Grand Cherokee and the Wagoneer. I mean, lower models don't really feel that luxurious, but this does genuinely kind of fit the part, especially in Summit trim. But I think a lot of that has to do with the way they position you in this car. The seating position, I've got the seat all the way down, as low as it can go, and you still sit pretty high. It's a very commanding driving position in this, and it's what does remind me so much of a Range Rover when I drive this. Not only all the stuff that's wrapped in leather in here and kind of just the hardness of some of the materials, the wood, the leather on the steering wheel, the seats, all that stuff. It does feel very Range Rover-y, but the biggest Range Rover thing is the way you sit in this car, the way you see out of this car. And even I think the design language of this WL they've been doing since 21, it is very Range Rover-y, and I think they've kind of completed this mission without straight copying Range Rover design like some of our friends in South Korea do with the Kia Telluride and the Hyundai Santa Fe. This kind of still has its own identity, but if you know, you know, and it kind of gives that vibe while you drive it. So this has active driving assist. It's an optional extra on this car. Stay engaged with the task of driving, it tells you, but you are able to go completely hands-free with this, and it'll change lanes for you, and it'll do everything. See that? And this actually did something very impressive yesterday. We're going to get back over to the right because we're not passing anyone, but this did something very impressive yesterday. I was filming my night drive for Winding Road, and I went to show off an auto lane change. And as soon as I put my signal on to go left, there was a car in the far right lane that went to make a lane change into the middle. Well, I was already halfway. What was that? Anyway, I was already halfway into the middle lane, and they started to make their lane change, and the car recognized that, and it put the right turn signal back on and put me back over into the right lane. So it's very aware of its surroundings, this thing. So it seems to be a pretty intuitive system, and also easy to use with all these physical buttons over here on the right-hand side of the wheel. Ride quality with this air suspension is quite nice. The only thing you sometimes get is a bit of road intrusion. Since we have a 21-inch wheel on this car, you do sometimes feel more than I would like. I think this with an 18 would be just about perfect, maybe even a 19, but 21s are a bit much, I think. But if you want to have that Southeast Michigan G-Wagon curb appeal, then you got to have the 21s, of course, on your Grand Cherokee. The reason I call it that is because, okay, if you live in Michigan, you know this. Pretty much everyone has a relative that either works for Ford, GM, or Stellantis, which means that when you're going to look for a car, you're probably considering a discount from one of your relatives, and that is just kind of the reality of living in Michigan, is you could probably get a pretty good discount on a Jeep, as opposed to, you know, going out and getting something like a, I don't know, what's a foreign, like if you're cross-shopping this with like a 4Runner or something, it's going to be a lot cheaper for you to go and get a Jeep Grand Cherokee because your uncle Bob or whatever worked for Chrysler for 30 years, and now you can get a good lease, a good lease price on your Grand Cherokee. Also got a camera mirror in this car. That's nice to see. Good tech overall. As far as sitting in this car goes, obviously we talked about seating position. I'm honestly not overly impressed with the seat. Obviously the materials on it, we talked about that. They're very nice, but the seat itself, it has so many adjustments. There are 4 physical switches down here on the side of the seat. We've got good adjustment with this, and that isn't my complaint. But I found just kind of sitting in the seat this week that it feels a little bit low quality. Like you feel the lumbar kind of shifting around and popping and creaking, and sometimes over bumps the whole seat will kind of rattle and shake. And I don't know, maybe they're really just taking this whole Range Rover thing and running with it, because it does feel sort of exactly like a Range Rover seat. But I don't know, adjustment's good. It's just taken me a long time to get my seating position dialed into where I want it to be, and I've just screwed it up, and now it's not where I want it to be anymore. I don't know, the seat itself, it's a little bit harder than I would like. Driver's footwell, for the most part, is pretty good and wide open. I don't find myself resting my leg on this bit, but if you were to, it would be a bit uncomfortable, because even though it is wrapped in leather, it's not padded. It's just hard plastic that they've wrapped in leather and stitched. Overall, NVH with this Jeep seems to be okay. I mean, this is just a huge rolling brick at the end of the day. Lots of sound deadening in this, and they really do a good job of portraying this as just a big, heavy, luxurious Luxo barge going down the highway. That is exactly what it feels like. Very commanding presence going 80 miles an hour down the highway in the WL Grand Cherokee. All right, well, I think the last thing I want to do before we take the camera off for a bit is a sound system test on this 19-speaker Macintosh. So why don't we go ahead and do that for you guys right now, and we will play ourselves into a bit of a time lapse. This thing is still beeping at me. I don't know why. And then we'll pick this back up once we are getting off the highway in Troy, Michigan. Welcome back to the Jeep Grand Cherokee with the Hurricane. Hasn't been terribly long, but we are now in sort of the outskirts of Detroit, so kind of a new scene for you guys to see here on the channel. But I wanted to talk about this throttle response since we are in a bit more of a city setting now, because this was hard to, fully touch on in the performance loop and the highway. But, I think with Jeep having a 6 or an 8 cylinder in the Grand Cherokee for so many years, it was a bit of a challenge for them to kind of dial in the little things with this 4-cylinder. Obviously, the power, the torque, all of that, it's there, and it feels just about the same as a 6 or an 8 cylinder of a previous Jeep Grand Cherokee. But I think where they struggled a bit was in the throttle response. Now, I found this to be kind of the most irritating in situations like this, where you're in stop and go, or where you're trying to kind of shoot a gap or take off a little bit briskly, but not full throttle. You give this some throttle, and this is not a good example right now either because they didn't just fully take off, but you kind of get into this throttle, and with an even input of about 20% until about 2,500 RPM, it feels fine. But then something switches. It's like boost kicks in or something, and all of a sudden 20% throttle feels like 60% throttle, and then you have to take your foot off the accelerator completely. So I think the throttle tuning has a little bit of a ways to go, and it does really sort of paint this as a typical 4-cylinder turbo SUV, because a lot of these kind of behave like this. The Volkswagen Atlas drives like this, the Infiniti QX60 and QX65 drive like this, and it's not a nice feeling. You kind of want that even sort of velvety throttle response like you get from a BMW X5 or a Porsche Cayenne. So it cheapens the experience a little bit here in this Jeep Grand Cherokee. Do a quick MPG check. 24.6. Okay, so we're over our combined rating, but we are slightly under our highway rating of 26. But hey, 24.6 in a Jeep Grand Cherokee, not horribly upset about that. Yeah, passing power, merging power, no problem there. You're going to be just fine with this. Now, once you're at highway speeds, this will drop down to its aerodynamic ride height. So that is option 2 on your little manual adjuster over here, which obviously you can set it to at other times, but automatically it will do this. And I think when you slow down to like 55 or 45, it'll go back into normal height, so option 3. But it helps the speed just a little bit slipperier and help you be just that much more efficient on the highway. Welcome to Big Beaver Road, which is exit 69 here in Michigan. And if you don't believe me, there will be a sign to validate that in just a second. But we are exiting the highway. Only 5 minutes to go left in the trip. Here's the sign. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, exiting the highway here in the Grand Cherokee, we are going to make our way to the mall. And I think maybe after the mall, we'll go and find some lunch because I am quite hungry. But Jeep's been good to sit in, for the last 45 or so minutes. I have actually become less mad at this seat. I'm not as dissatisfied with it as I have been otherwise this week. Actually sitting in it on the highway, it's actually done a fine job. And then otherwise, do one more MPG check. 25.1. We've actually improved upon this a bit. The Macintosh sound system in this thing is incredible. I don't know that I would quite say it's on par with like a Volvo Bowers & Wilkins or the Bowers & Wilkins in our Alpina XP7, but it's pretty dang close. And for a car that's 60 grand base, like having a sound system this good, I'm very happy with that. So kudos to Jeep for the banging sound system here in the Grand Cherokee. And this is what I mean. You see these everywhere out here. All right, let's join probably 30,000 other people, because today is Saturday. I was gonna go yesterday and then timing didn't work out, so we're here on a Saturday. It's not going to be the most pleasant thing in the world, but it'll give us the chance to evaluate real-world maneuverability here in this little parking garage that they offer, which is nice. Lots of parking at this place, but it's because there are lots of people. So it's just the way that it goes. We're gonna go around the corner here. Why don't we go ahead and follow in another Detroit G-Wagon here. I think that's a long wheelbase though. Looks like a long boy. This is the closest that most of these Jeeps get to doing off-roading. The ramp into Somerset. Should have put it in off-road 2 mode to do this climb here. Low range. We do have four-wheel drive low on this. If you've got a really steep mall entrance ramp, obviously that is usable for you. Automatic headlights kicking on there. We're going to go ahead and go down this road. This is usually where I like to park. Among all of the other Jeep Grand Cherokees, I see 2 of them currently, so we'll continue the lineage here. Into reverse. Pulls up a very bright backup camera, but it'll help me get into these lines very well. And straight back up to the wall, which this is not a very big, or I should say it's not a very long car. These parking spots are very small. I'm getting right up to it here. If you were in the long Jeep Grand Cherokee, the L, I should say, you'd be sticking out a little bit further, but we are all good. Parking brake is down by your left knee in this. I'll go ahead and shut this off. Quick little look at our ambient lighting in here, which is controllable by a physical dimmer switch. The Topher must be just thrilled with this. It's got a dimmer switch for ambient lighting and the gauge cluster right next to each other there. So lots of nice, good physical controls here with this guy. And then to lock this, just a little button on your key fob and it honks on the first lock in typical Stellantis fashion. All right, well, I'm gonna go ahead and walk in, hopefully find myself some shoes, and then we'll go find some lunch and we will wrap this one up. Even the security is a Jeep Grand Cherokee.
You have reached the end of the skywalk.
Walking back up to the Jeep Grand Cherokee, you can see a couple other people decided to come out in their Grand Cherokees. But actually, something that I really like about this car is that it has rear proxy key, which means if you bought something, you want to throw it in the back, you could use that. But obviously it has it on the front as well. And I don't know, the parking spots are pretty decent sizes here, but the doors are not so big that you cannot open them and get in and out of the Jeep. So that is a good thing. And also that's a good demonstration of just how quiet it is in this interior. So let's fire this thing up and we'll wrap up our thoughts on the Grand Cherokee. Turning circle is pretty good. Steering itself, quick enough, to get you out of tight spaces. You don't feel like you're driving a bus around, which I like. And the high seating position just makes it easy to place this car as well. Our last stop of the day is going to be downtown Birmingham, Michigan, to hopefully find some lunch. And even there, I bet we will still see some Jeep Grand Cherokees mixed in among the actual Range Rovers and G-Wagons, as Birmingham is, I think it's the wealthiest city in Michigan. But anyway, I guess that'll segue us into our wrap on this new Jeep Grand Cherokee with the Hurricane 4-cylinder. I think in 80% of situations, this Hurricane 4-cylinder doesn't devalue this driving experience, but there are a couple situations where it does, and you just have to decide if it's worth it to you or not to still go with a top trim Jeep Grand Cherokee. Now, here's my thing. I think the value proposition here is pretty strong, and I think with what you get here, it does make a lot of sense for 60 grand. I mean, everything these days is 60 grand. So I'm thinking like having everything in here wrapped in leather, having the 19-speaker Macintosh sound system, having what seems to be pretty nice build quality in this car, and for the most part, nice driving characteristics. I mean, for the price point, it seems like a nice choice. Now, there are other things you can get for $60,000, but for other things in this segment, and I'm thinking like luxury cars, like a Mercedes GLE, a BMW X5, a Porsche Cayenne, those are like a segment above, but that's kind of what Jeep is reaching for. And the reason I bring those up is this does genuinely feel like a bit of a budget alternative to one of those. And I know Hyundai and Kia and Mazda, they all try to kind of reach that level. But this interior feels the closest to actually reaching it that I have felt. So good job on Jeep. And it makes sense because the Grand Cherokee is their bread and butter. If they're going to focus their energy on one model, it's going to be this one, and you can tell that they have here. So I've had a good few days daily driving this Jeep Grand Cherokee, and I'm always reminded how much I do just genuinely like this SUV when I'm tossed the keys to one. And honestly, as far as things that I don't like, there's really not much. There's 2 Grand Cherokees in a row right there. There's really not much that I don't like about this. You guys know I've touched on the throttle response. I don't super love that. I mean, is that really it? Did I say that there was anything else? Oh, and this climate panel I don't really like either. But otherwise, it really does the trick for me. There are also a lot of people out in this area and really all over the country that daily drive Wranglers. And for the same price as a lot of those Wranglers, you could have a Grand Cherokee, and a nice one at that. And I think this would just do such a better job for you as a daily driver than a Wrangler. I've daily driven a ton of Wranglers, and none of them are even close to as nice. I know the Wrangler has a different purpose, but who is actually going and doing hardcore off-roading with a Wrangler? Most people just drive them around and do this sort of thing. So if you're going to just be mall crawling, this is the Jeep to mall crawl in. It is lovely at it. And you can race Peepaw in the Ford Escape. There it is. You guys see what I mean about that delay? That was even throttle input that entire time. Man, if Jeep could just get the throttle tuning figured out on this thing, I don't think I'd have anything to complain about apart from the climate panel. That would be it for me. It'd be cool to maybe have some gauges. I think that would kind of add to like the richness of this interior, to have like some very nice looking gauges in here. They're just kind of basic looking, and it's electronic, so it is what it is. Audi R8. Always good car spotting out here in the Birmingham area as well. I've just been spotting Grand Cherokees all day. There's a Range Rover and a Grand Cherokee behind it. I swear this area is the Grand Cherokee capital of the world. Alrighty guys, well let's get this pulled into downtown Birmingham. Slightly different from downtown Ann Arbor. This is a lot smaller. It's much more condensed, which means it's usually really hard to find a parking space, especially, I was going to say especially on a weekend, but I think it's just any time, because lots of people work down here too, so even during the week it's hard to find a parking space. Alrighty guys, well I'm going to take the last spot here on the end. I can't believe there was even anything available. Where is the button for the cameras? I know it's got to be here somewhere. It's a Jeep. Do you have to go to the vehicle menu to get to cameras? Okay, I've just found something else I don't like about this. Right at the end of the video. Oh, I've actually parked this fine. I could pull up a little bit more, use our ground clearance. Into park. Yeah, it'd be nice if there was just a button. I don't know, because that's parking sensors off. I don't think that'll pull up. No, that just turns off park sense, so that doesn't pull up a camera for you. There's nothing down here to start a camera. Okay, another thing is this is all piano black, so it just gets covered in dust, as you can see, now that the sun is out. That's for the passenger screen. Yeah, you know what they need is up here in this line of buttons? They need one more button. That's for your cameras, for when you're pulling up on a space. I know most people just use their wheels to feel where the curb is, but I don't particularly like to do that. All right, anyway, let's pull the parking brake. We'll kit out. We'll show you this thing for one last time. I keep forgetting that they put this engine start-stop in the middle. And that will be a wrap for today's video. The Jeep Grand Cherokee here, looking very much at home in this very similarly colored building. There, it's a velvet red building. Look at that. But no, it's been, jokes aside, it's been lovely to live with for the past 3 days. And I think the Hurricane is about 80% of the way there to feeling appropriate as another Grand Cherokee drives by. So, okay, I think on that note, we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. But also go and watch my first video, my first impressions here on this, where we did a bit of a canyon drive for some more content on this thing. But that'll be it. Thank you guys all so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care.